Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our new series, A Passion for Health of the Happy Few. Today, we meet Dr. Helen McCarthy, the Appetite Doctor. Good morning, Dr. McCarthy.
Hi, nice to see you.
Dr. McCarthy, tell us a little bit about you and why you're called the Appetite Doctor.
I'm a clinical psychologist by background. I've been a clinical psychologist in the UK for 30 years. And what that has involved is working with individuals to help them overcome problems with anxiety, depression, psychological trauma, and eating disorders. Those have been the main areas of interest. And I became particularly interested in weight and eating after I saw a client to help her with bulimia nervosa back in 2011. And I treated her successfully, but she still wanted to lose more weight. It was just her comments about this that made me very interested in the psychology of dieting and weight loss. And it became very clear to me very quickly, conventional diets fail most of us most of the time because they ignore our biology and they ignore our psychology. So they ignore the way that we've evolved over such an extended period of time. So once I started really thinking about conventional dieting, I decided that I was going to try and lose weight myself without dieting, using everything I knew from 30 years of psychology. And so at the time, I was about 1.5 stones above where I ideally wanted to be. And so I started just experimenting with how to change my eating in a way that would allow me to lose weight, but would not involve giving up any of my favorite foods. That was the basis of it, that I kept all my favorite foods into what I ate, and I adapted things around that. So literally none of them were excluded. Cake, French cheese, wine, ice cream, nothing went out. But actually something that was really interesting to me was that as I changed how I ate, I discovered that I started fancying more what would be generally called healthy foods more of the time. But that's just an interesting aside at the moment, because the way that I achieved this weight loss was just beginning to really use my natural hunger and fullness signals to guide my eating more than it had done for decades. I mean, I think lots of us get into this pattern of eating beyond the point of being full and eating when we're not hungry. And it was an absolute revelation to me that if I stopped eating at the point of being just full and waited to eat until I was definitely hungry, the weight naturally came off steadily. I lost a stone over a period of 4 months, and then I lost another 0.5 stone actually, and that weight then stayed off easily. And the reasons for that were not just that I was eating in tune with my natural bodily signals, that was part of it, but because I'd made the changes from how I was eating, which was a bit all over the shop really, to eating much more in tune with my body, step by step. And that was absolutely a crucial realization, really.
So you talk about the concept of satiety and hunger signals and the fact that we lose touch with those signals. Mm-hmm. So why do we lose touch with those signals?
Mm. Well, I think that's a good question. I think loads of reasons. Some of them are environmental, like we're encouraged to finish what's on our plate when we're a child, or we're given treats if we behave well, so we get a taste of those things even when we're not hungry. But also because we sometimes discover that certain foods change our internal state, so that we start eating for what people call emotional reasons rather than reasons of hunger or fullness. Those reasons are no less legitimate, I would say, than eating in tune with your hunger and fullness, but they can cause problems. It can cause the side effect of feeling that you're not really in control of your eating, or that you're gaining weight in a way that you're uncomfortable with.
So how do you help get in tune again with those signals?
Well, I think the first thing that is a really helpful bit of biology for people to know is that we have two types of fullness signals. One is the very immediate change in our physical state, our physical feelings as we are eating. So mouthful by mouthful, bite by bite, our stomach is expanding, stretching as food enters it. And the stretching of the stomach wall sends immediate signals to our brain to tell us that we are consuming food. That's the first set of satiety signals or fullness signals. The second set are the hormonal signals that are sent from the gut to the brain through the blood very much more slowly than those immediate neuronal signals from the stomach wall stretching. That can take 20 or 30 minutes to register in the brain. And of course, we can eat a lot of food in that 20 or 30 minutes if we wait for those signals. So what I encourage people to do is to start to tune in to what's happening as they are eating bite by bite and notice the changing feelings, and using what I developed as a really simple tool for doing this, which I call the appetite pendulum. And it's on my website, Appetite Doctor website, which is just a very simple -5 to +5 scale of -5 being extremely hungry, +5 being extremely full. And you use the scale to gauge where you are on that hunger and fullness scale at any point. And while you're eating, you notice getting increasingly full, and you stop eating at the point of being just full, which is +3 on that appetite pendulum scale. And once you start doing that, there's a lot of anxiety that can come with change and with altering how you eat. You know, if changing eating habits is hard, whether you do it through this method or whether you do it through any other method. The great thing about appetite retraining, which is the name I gave to the approach, is that it goes one step at a time, so that the anxiety that's produced and the demands on you are manageable, rather than, I mean, overnight, if you go on a conventional diet, what it tends to do is ask you to change the eating habits a lifetime overnight. And that psychologically and biologically is just about as hard as you can get, really, in terms of eating. It puts you under phenomenal strain.
So do you help change eating habits with several techniques, or do you have just one? How do you approach it?
Yeah. Well, in outline, the approach starts where you are now. That's one important thing to say, is that whatever your eating habits are now, you start where you are now, and you identify which specific habits need to change in order for you to get to a point of eating in tune with your body. So having meals with gaps, stopping when you're just full and waiting until you're definitely hungry by the next meal. And that involves tweaking what you eat and how much you eat. But there are lots of specific techniques. I've got 12 tips, for instance, in my book on how to stop eating at the point of being just full. And then I identified 5 different types of eating when you're not hungry. And I've got guidelines for how to change each of those. And what I mean by non-hungry eating is eating out of habit. So eating, for instance, biscuits with coffee, whether you're hungry or not. Opportunistic eating, which is eating the cake just because you saw it, or anything else for that matter. Insurance policy eating, which is eating something now in case you're hungry later. Emotional eating, which is what I've mentioned already, and eating in response to cravings. So that's 5 types of eating that many of us do or have done when we're not hungry. And I give particular techniques and tips about how to address each of those. But first of all, you just need to identify which things you need to change. You don't need to change all of your eating habits. That's really important to say. You only change what you need to, and you do that one step at a time.
And do we learn those techniques from your book, or do we need a consultation?
No, it's all in the book. It's all in the book. Some people do come to see me individually, but I get loads of emails and messages on social media from people who've read the book and used it really successfully. So fantastic. I'd say read the book. if you want to know about the approach.
That's great. Thank you so
Great.
much for your time, Dr. McCarthy. That was very interesting.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.